September 1954. 12-year-old John Jacob Swaim was on a tractor on his family's fields when he suddenly noticed someone or something standing off nearby. Now, this thing ended up being a short entity with pointed ears and a pointed nose, crouched down, watching him. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just another tinfoil hat. Welcome to my show. Today, we're going to be discussing the fascinating case of the Wheat Field Watcher. Now, this case occurred around dusk on September 2nd, 1954, and involved 12-year-old John Jacob, not Jingleheimer Schmidt, but Swaim of Coldwater, Kansas. He had been disking on a tractor on his family's wheat field and said that it had taken longer than it should have due to some trouble with the tractor. At about 8 o'clock, he turned the machine off and began walking back to his home when he noticed someone crouched nearby watching him. So this someone, who was poised about 20 feet away from where John Jacob was an entity about as tall as a 5-year-old child, so roughly about 3 feet tall, with pointed ears, pointed nose, and a, to quote John, mean expression. He claimed that he wore sort of shiny tan clothing and it had 2 cylinders on his back. This being stared at John for a couple of seconds before moving very quickly. John Jacob said that it was almost like he flew away from him to a nearby flying saucer. John Jacob only noticed this saucer when he saw the little being run towards it. He said that it was halfway hidden by a nearby terrace. He claimed that the saucer was about 50 feet in diameter, just floating in the sky about 5 feet above the ground and about 100 yards away from where the being was first spotted. In one newspaper account, he's actually quoted as saying that it was shaped like a flying cucumber. The entity jumped in a door and the object rose straight up and completely soundlessly into the sky before heading off to the southwest, at which point John could see lights shining from windows in the craft. When John Jacob was asked how fast the object moved, he said that compared to it, a jet would seem like a turtle. Very descriptive kid. As soon as the object was out of sight, John Jacob ran home and told his father, also John Swaim, what had occurred. Now, the boy's family insisted that he really wasn't the sort of kid given to telling stories or tall tales, and so his father took the event seriously enough to call the local sheriff, Sheriff Hadley, who told him to just stay away from the area until the next day. The next day, Mr. Swaim and Sheriff Hadley went to the scene of the sighting, where they actually claimed to find a number of footprints. They said that 3 complete prints showed small wedge-shaped impressions, about 4.5 inches long and 2 inches wide at the toes, which then kind of tapered off to very narrow heels. Swaim, familiar with tracks in the area, said that they didn't match any animal tracks he had ever seen, and looked like they'd been made by someone or something running in a soft shoe. Now, of all the aspects of this case, however, my absolute favorite has got to be the picture which was included in the Wichita Beacon of John Jacob and his brother and sister holding kittens, which was captioned, "John Jacob's story brought more excitement to the Swaim household than the fun of playing with kittens." I mean, come on, you really don't get very many gems like that. Seriously though, aside from the kittens, this is one of those really kind of fantastic early mid-century classic cases of humanoid contact, and is certainly dusted or perhaps fairy dusted with folkloric motifs. The first to stand out to me is the agricultural setting. This is yet another one of those encounters that seems as though just a modern translation of earlier encounters with the good folk, or the fairies, had by people tending the earth. Also, another kind of folkloric motif in this case is the pointed ears of the entity. Now, this aspect, while heavily popularized in the Victorian era to represent fairies or elves, and of course extremely common even today in popular culture, has been a staple of fairy iconography at least since the Middle Ages, with some people tying in, the kind of demonization of the fairy faith by Christianity, or also even going even further back to the portrayals of the Greek satyrs. Now, interestingly enough, too, another early mid-century classic, that of the Kelly Hopkinsville case, also portrayed these beings as having pointed ears as kind of the popular image of the entities observed there. Now, kind of juxtaposing the kind of classic folkloric aspects of this entity, you have the outfit of the being, complete with the little canisters on the back, which John Jacob actually believed was how it could fly so quickly back to the saucer. Now, in my opinion, these occurrences, these anomalies, whatever you want to call them, do effectively clothe themselves or mask themselves in the concepts of a time to try and make sense of themselves, unless this is the witness's own perceptions or own mindset kind of clothing whatever this anomaly truly is in concepts that would make sense to the witness. Who knows? So, here, the jetpack-like canisters on the back of the outfit, the shiny outfit, they really seem like a reference to the modern folklore of the UFOnauts. Effectively, what we have here is almost an elf riding a UFO. Here, too, is another case with a fantastic example of an extremely, decidedly creepy attribute of many anomalous encounters. This thing was watching John Jacob. It really begs the question why some super advanced race of extraterrestrial beings that have somehow conquered spaceflight to be able to get here from wherever else they are from wouldn't have a decent enough surveillance system just to watch a kid on a tractor from the safety of their ship. In my opinion, the constant, oops, you caught me routine of all sorts of paranormal entities is more of a call out to the symbol of the observer and the observed, rather than just accidental. Also evident here is the concept of perfect timing. If the tractor hadn't had problems, which, given the proximity of the so-called craft, we could speculate that this may also fall into the category of vehicular failure. But anyway, regardless of, a mundane or extra mundane reason for the tractor's failure, John Jacob should not have been there alone or that late in the day. But he was. And this just so happened to be the day that a UFO shows up and this little guy comes out and is watching him. Genuinely, again, it's one of those perfect timing type scenarios. This is another case, too, where, however subjective or immaterial the occurrence was or seemed to be, here, again, we have this totally soundless event of a craft going supposedly much faster than even a jet, something that should have caused some sort of disturbance. So effectively, bending the laws of physics, where there was trace evidence in the form of these bizarre wedge-shaped footprints. And yet again, we have the departure of this anomaly heralded by light. Now, the craft was not lit up, it wasn't luminous until the little being jumped inside of it and it took off. I've said it a million times if I've said it once. Throughout a variety of anomalous encounters, whether it's UFOs, ghosts, cryptids, whatever, it seems as though light phenomena occurs at these juncture points in the experience, usually beginning or ending the occurrence. Well, if you enjoyed this episode on the Wheatfield Watcher, please like, and if you're new to this field of crop circles, go ahead and subscribe to see what weirdness the future may have in store. Till then, you can keep up with me on my free blog at patreon.com/justanothertinfoilhat. And for today, I am Zelia Edgar, signing off.